In this episode, we'll discuss how to resolve business conflicts without combat. We'll talk about things like what is the advantage to working with a business attorney whose focus is on early and efficient resolution? What can business owners and business leaders do to best prepare to address business disputes more easily and efficiently? And of course, the power of aligning with a client-focused attorney, someone that isn't looking for a fight, someone who sees the need from both sides, and someone with a never-ending eye toward resolution. Welcome to Weekly Wins and Losses. My name is James Hepner, former real estate entrepreneur turned self-development hacker, coach, and fulfillment strategist. Each week, we bring you a thought to wrestle with that'll help you live fully alive and gain more life. Real life is made up of both wins and losses. Both were designed for your good. That's basic reality. Without facing and learning how to embrace your losses for greater gain, you miss out. You leave 50% of your life experience on the table. So with that, let's begin the show. With inflation rates rising, interest rates shooting up, gas prices skyrocketing, and the continued global unrest, it's easy to find what's wrong in the world. Tony Robbins says, what's wrong in the world is always available, but so is what's right. Instead of trying to hope and wish the world into a better place, it's time to make the most important decision any of us can ever make, and that is to invest in yourself. Now, you know I've always stood with you as you've navigated the uncertainties of life's reality. However, it's now time that I step up and take decisive action to walk alongside your current life journey in a new way, and that is by making myself available to you in a radical, new way during these challenging times. So for a limited time, I'm inviting you to a 45-minute strategic business life consultation. No charge and no strings attached. This consultation is where you'll regain the reins of your life. It's where you'll gain clarity on exactly why you're stuck, moving you directly towards your optimal outcomes. And I'll be honest, and I'm humbled to say, however, my clients' generous reflection of their time spent with me reveals the truth. The skills they've been able to master in such a short period of time by engaging in our one-on-one strategic sessions have changed their lives in so many ways. This is the only invitation that I can fathom that will put my skin in the game of your life in such a way that will allow us, you and I, to address your specific needs with precision and excellence. 45 minutes, just you and I, together on one call to get you headed in the direction you crave most. Here's what my clients report after one-on-one sessions with me. A decrease in indecision. An increase in clarity, confidence, and courage. An increase to fully capitalize on what's directly before them. An increase in the impact that they crave to have at work, on their families, and inside their communities. A decrease in pain and suffering. A decrease in anxiety. So, if you want to move beyond old stories, get clear in where you're headed so that you can shake your world, then here's a rich opportunity for you today. One-on-one strategic business life consultation with me. One-on-one 45 minutes. So, if you want to maximize this opportunity, if you want to reclaim and regain your inner power, then you're going to want to slow things down during these challenging times. And how? Well, engaging and getting right with your life and making a life plan. I should let you know that this offer will fill up and expire. Click in the show notes to get your 45-minute strategic business life consultation. No charge, no strings attached. May this episode change your everyday life. Welcome, friends. Today we have on the show someone that when I first met this lady, oh my goodness, she is an attorney. And so what do we do when we meet attorneys? We're like, I might need this person someday. And what do I think about this person? And I wonder how she does her life. Dara Rosenbaum, she is a law firm owner, an attorney, a business advisor, podcast host, and she has a passion for creating, helping, protecting, and growing companies.
There you go. Not draining companies, growing companies. She is a litigator and transactional lawyer who has become an attorney. And the reason she became an attorney is so that she could help people, and whose love of helping business owners drew her to business law. So you chose this because you really wanted to help people. Dara, welcome to the show.
It's wonderful to be here.
It is wonderful to have you. And when
Thank
I
you.
say when I met you, and it's like, okay, I was introduced to you, and I'm like, okay, you're an attorney. So back to that point, and of course, what we do is we typically reflect back what has been, or what's our current experience with these people, these right, the people that we have need of every now and again,
Uh-huh.
sometimes perhaps. But what has our experience been like, right? And so I've had several experiences, one of which being, these people, some of these people are like, well, there's an opportunity here, let's see if we can't drag this out. And then other people like you and I, you and I quickly became friends when I heard your stance, and your style isn't to drag it out, isn't to get all red faced and just angry, but to really get to the heart of the matter. And oh my goodness, sit at the same side of the table as your adversary. And so being there, and so focusing on resolving, but that's a whole bunch. Dara, talk to us a bit about what had you decide to take the angle of being a helpful lawyer. And I'm not saying that lawyers in general aren't helpful, but there are some that I think are solving for their own needs more than a greater mission. So you say you're a transactional lawyer, and that's fair and that's fine, but I think you're helping like the vision of business. So what had you decide that was going to be your angle?
What business owners want and need. I mean, for the most part, I mean, listen, I've definitely had bloodthirsty clients, and I'm happy to go to battle with them. I'll go to battle for them and with them, and I love a good fight. But for the most part, business owners, business leaders, people who need attorneys are not looking for a fight, looking for a
Mm,
resolution. They're
mhm,
looking to figure out how to
mm,
fix the problem as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
mm,
They're not looking for years of litigation. They're not looking for endless depositions. They're not looking for, the way I think of it, is like the movie attorney or the TV show attorney who's pounding on the table and screaming and threatening people. That may be fun for the lawyer. It may kind of satisfy that little bloodthirst for the lawyer. It's just not, in my opinion, in the client's best interest. Because at some point, you're going to call your adversary and say, hey, is this something we can work out? 95, probably, and
mm,
greater than
mm,
95% of
mm,
cases get settled.
mm,
So how do they get settled? They get settled by people talking.
mm,
And, yes, you can be in the courtroom with somebody and you can, thunder away at a witness and you can, make an impassioned argument. Most cases are going to get settled on the phone or in an in-person meeting, and you want to have a rapport with your adversary. You want to present your arguments in certainly in a passionate way and in a zealous way, but in a way where you can, you're working toward a resolution. Like you said, sitting on the same side of the table, I think of it metaphorically, like sit on the same side of the table and stare at the wall with the problem. And how are we going to resolve it? Listen, you've got the strong points on your side, the strong points on my side, and there's some weaknesses I have. I recognize your weaknesses. What are we going to get to at the end of the day? And can we get there now? Or do we have to go through a discovery process? Do we
mm,
have to take depositions? Do we have to, have a mediator come in? We may need a mediator. That may be an efficient way to get it done. Do we want to talk about arbitration? So, I don't
well,
like the idea of getting to the end of a years long litigation and resolving a case, over the phone or in person at a meeting, this same way it should have and could have been resolved years earlier in a much more efficient and less expensive way.
it's a great place to pause. Should have and could have. Some people, I don't know, seems like that's something that you made a decision on, perhaps when you were younger. What happened in your life where it became a should have and could have versus a dragged out? And the reason I say this is one thing when you and I met, and I wrote this down when I met you. You said some people see me as a teddy bear with fangs. And
Yeah.
that is, I'm so curious about that because here's the deal. Something about your past screams to me that there was this tension that you felt, and you realize there's a time to hit the switch, and there's primarily like your core energy is to be with what is here right now. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, let's go there. So talk to me. That decision could have and should have. Where did that happen in your life?
I think early in my career, and I started off as a litigator and I'm a trial attorney by training.
Hmm.
I think early in my career, I certainly saw those cases where, I wasn't necessarily looking for the resolution at the beginning. I was taking sort of a guided tour of litigation. We were doing the discovery, we were doing depositions, we were doing motion practice, there were appeals. And I was looking at it and go like, this didn't serve the client. We got to a point that we probably could have gotten to with a really good conversation over whether it was a number of years or a number of months, but with an eye toward resolving things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, because when you recognize that 95+% of cases are going to be resolved without going to trial, to me, it just became very natural to, I think it's my personality. I'm not litigious as a person and I'm not combative in my personal life. I look and say, you know what, if the relationship with this friend or this family member is something that I want to continue and I'm not going to write them out of my life, then let's resolve the issue sooner rather than later. I don't want to have a grudge. I don't want to have this long battle with somebody. I'd like to talk through, and like I said, even as a younger person, currently in my personal life, if I have an issue with somebody, I'd like to talk it through and get to a resolution rather than fighting about it. I just don't see a lot of point in that, and I think that sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes it's necessary as a lawyer. But when it's not necessary, and you can cut through some of the emotion and some of the animosity of whatever legal issue or conflict or dispute somebody's having, often you can be just a little bit more efficient by resolving it.
I love that. I love the way you put that. It seems to me, and I'm going to botch this, but just paraphrasing, tell me, I'm willing to be wrong anywhere, but it seems to me like what you're saying, you chose to do battle well. You got into the profession, you did battle in a certain way. And then what you realized is, listen, you came into this awareness, does it serve the client? And you're being, well, why am I here? Am I here for me or am I here for my client? If I don't have clients, I don't have a business. Aside from that, what actually drew me to litigation? I want to help business owners. I want to serve them. And so doing battle well, you got something that, oh my goodness, when you and I were talking and you said resolving conflicts without combat, I'm like, now there's another piece. Because I'm like, okay, so here's what's interesting. Doing battle well for me looks a bit like you said, let's first turn our chairs to the wall and stare at the problem. The thing, it's just on the wall. The problem, but just stare at that for a while and see if we can't figure out what we need to do in realistic terms. Listen, addressing that we all have needs. You would like this, I would like this. What's realistic for the two of us? So doing battle well is to go to the place of, why don't we see if we can't do this so that it serves you best, Mr. Client, which is who wants to be dragged out in court, who wants to spend a whole bunch of money. I mean, it supports your lifestyle, but perhaps doesn't make you too happy. Where you're going is, it doesn't matter. I want to be here and help you get to resolution as fast as possible. But then all of a sudden, as we move along, like you say, sometimes there's conflict. And what's interesting is we as humans, it seems like quite often we're on a mission to thrive. And so the things that are natural, like conflict is natural. It's just natural. Like, I want this, you want this, we have preference. And so you talk about resolving these conflicts without combat. So hard infused into your primary ethos is, listen, combat isn't really what we're doing here. So how do you keep, actually, I'm just going to slow it down here. How do you take whatever is happening and not label it as combat? Because I think a lot of people say conflict and they're like, oh, head to head, we're going to do combat. It's going to be war. How do you step into it from your angle?
I try to take as much emotion out of it as possible. I try to, and I want to know the client's end goal. So if the client's end goal is, I'm severing this relationship with this business partner or this client or this vendor, and I don't care what happens to them, I want every dollar of my money back, and I want to make them pay, and I want to make them sweat, then we have a certain approach. If the answer is, this is my biggest client or my biggest vendor or my most important partner, well, you don't want to go scorched earth on that one. You don't want to antagonize the other side. You don't want to make the relationship more difficult than it's going to be if our client wants someone to continue to work with them. So I think you want to know right up front how the client wants to approach it. And you want to check in as you're handling the matter. Like, okay, we still excuse me, we still said, still going, full bore on this one, or, do we want to think about a different approach? And I try to get people to understand that there are ways to do things while saving face, letting the other side save face if that's important, and get to a resolution that everybody can live with. And then everybody, listen, is everybody going to be thrilled? No, because not every person's going to get what they want, but that doesn't happen at trial either. So, somebody wins and somebody loses. Let's take it out of the hands of the jury or a judge, and let's work on it and figure out what we need. And if the answer is, listen, we've got to go through several months of discovery because you have documents that they want to see and they have documents that you want to see. We need to do these couple critical depositions and then let's sit down and have a conversation or mediation. I think that's the way I like to approach it is, let's keep the objective in mind. Let's try to take the growling, like, oh, this guy, I can't stand him and he's done this to other people. Like, okay, I get it. You're dealing with a really difficult person and you're dealing with somebody who's made you really angry. But, that's not going to serve you well in terms of how to approach this because you want to continue a relationship with this person or your industry is pretty small at all the wrong times and you don't want to get a reputation for, for suing your customers or suing your suppliers or, within a company, if you don't want to get a reputation for having difficulty with your business partners, that's not going to look good for the outside world. So there's a lot of features I think that go into it that as a business owner, I understand. And I understand the importance of, in the moment you're going to call me and you're going to say, I want to make this guy pay and you're gritting your teeth and you're like, that's it. And I want to, ultimately down the road, that approach is probably not going to serve you as well as something that can be more of a negotiated, mediated resolution that doesn't involve tons of money and tons of time and tons of emotion.
Gosh, isn't it fascinating what happens if we address emotions and focus on realities? It's like we bring the reality that, guess what, in the courtroom, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. And as a matter of fact, even if we do this mediation, you may feel like you're winning and you may feel like you're losing at the same time. So somewhere in the middle, we have to realize it's actually all gain if we let it. Now we can drag it out and maybe prove to ourselves and make a statement perhaps, because sometimes it is like this. It isn't just ego hit, I think. Sometimes it's like I'm making a statement so that other people don't pursue me in this way, right? So these are the things. But if you drill into, I want to pick your brain on this. If you drill into a client who's quite combative, right? And you wouldn't want to label it that way because for you, it's just you understand him. He's just coming at it and he doesn't maybe intend to, but then as you're working with this individual, so this client that's quite spiked, and no matter what you do and bring him to reason and bring him back down to reality and earth, it seems like they're really becoming disturbed that you're not wanting to become combative. What does that bring up for you then? And what does you do in a moment like that?
Take my direction from the client. So, if they're not looking for a resolution that's going to be discussed and mediated, they're looking to go to trial and they want that jury to decide, I'm all in.
Okay.
What I like to do though with a client who's, really just who wants that battle and wants to fight, I'm all in. I mean, that's fine. I have no problem with that. What I do though is I'm sure and certain at every phase to communicate. Like, listen, we just got these documents. They look really good for you. This might be a good time for us to approach them about settlement or approach them about some kind of resolution. Or listen, this witness didn't testify the way we wanted the witness to or expected the witness to. It's weakening your position. Maybe let's think about these kind of things. Listen, if we can do this next step, we're running the risk of this. So I think it's all to me about communication, because the client is ultimately in the driver's seat. I don't determine how the strategy is going to go. I'm going to make recommendations and I'm going to give advice and I'm going to rely on, my own experience, and I'll answer questions about, well, if you were me, what would you do? Happy to answer those questions. But ultimately the client decides. If the client wants me to take out my sword and shield and march to the courthouse, I'm all in. I just like to kind of check in as we go through and there are developments. The client knows that they're, listen, we're marching into the courthouse. Here's where our weakness is. Here's where we're vulnerable. Here's where I don't think this matter is worth what you thought it was worth. Maybe you were going to owe less money. Maybe you're going to get less money. However, whatever the dynamics are, I just want the client to understand, like, listen, I'm with you. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to litigate. I am a trial lawyer. But if I see an opportunity where something might get resolved earlier in a less expensive way, I'm always going to share that, and then they can feel free to reject it.
Seems to me like you're the kind of person that says, I will show up as you wish. The only thing is I will stress test. Do you really want us to go towards fighting for a resolution, or can we dissolve this before we even need to go to that work? Right. So I love, right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. And so the teddy bear stage is like, hey, listen, I'm the empathetic one. I'm hearing what you want. And ultimately, you're maybe a little spiked, but I also know that these things can pull from people, from families, from business time and these things. And so you're just making aware, stress testing. Hey, by the way. And all of a sudden they're like, no, actually, this is who I want you to be. And like, oh, that's no problem. Awesome. I can just go the fangs, no problem. But I want you to be in a state of awareness and that you can execute a proper decision that you're not going to regret later on.
And what's your appetite for the battle? What is your risk tolerance? What's your budget? What's your time frame?
Good.
All of those things I think are important. And I'll tell you, we spoke about it. The teddy bear with fangs actually came from an adversary of mine. Adversary called me and said, "Hey, I'm on this case with you, and I didn't know you, wasn't familiar with you. I called another colleague of mine who knows you, and he said she's a teddy bear with fangs." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he said, "Well, he said that you're easy to deal with, and you're easygoing, and you act professionally and responsibly and in good faith, but don't cross you." I was like, that's fair. I said, because, there are clients who say, I don't want to grant that courtesy to somebody. I don't want to give somebody an extension of time. I was taught as a young lawyer by a wonderful late Richard Bacalor, who is a legend in our business at, in his time. And he was he was the founder of one of the firms I worked for. And he said, you're never going to gain an advantage by not giving somebody an extension of time. Like your case is your case. You're not going to gain an advantage by being difficult to another adversary. You're not going to gain an advantage because at some point, and my business partner and I use the phrase, the barrel rolls. You're going to be on the top, you're going to be on the bottom. There's going to be a case where you need a favor or you need an extension. And if you've been the person in your career who doesn't grant extensions and isn't courteous and is going to be vindictive or underhanded or aggressive when it's not required or aggressive when it's not appropriate, you're never going to get that courtesy from somebody else. So I think that my clients understand that I will bear those fangs for them when I need to, but generally the maxim is true. You catch more flies with honey. So if you can, and same thing with a deposition. You're not going to hear me at a deposition for the most part, always exceptions, raising my voice and screaming. I'm going to go through and ask my questions in a methodical manner. And sometimes the witnesses aren't even aware that I'm getting devastating testimony for their position because they just feel like they're having a conversation.
So good. So we could go in the direction of asking you, what do you think of the Johnny Depp? But perhaps we won't, but that's an interesting little read, right? So, and you could argue that the lawyers on both sides, just real quick, are interesting at best, and they're doing best they can, right? But so now let's take the conversation. And earlier I said, so what happens if you have a client and they're very combative, like you're trying to bring reality, and they're like, I don't care, just do this for me, shut up and listen, dance, and finally you go, I gave you your ability to see, and you chose this, and you want me to show up with fangs. Not a problem. And it isn't always that someone who says, bring fangs, please. This is not like, I'm not solving for that. They're not a helpful human. Sometimes we just have these things and you say, fair enough. I just want to make sure you're thinking this through. And if you want me to go for it, awesome. Now let's take that and let's move it. So you're dealing with the counsel of the other. So what happens when you realize that the counsel of the other, so if you take yourself back even in your earlier journey, where you hadn't maybe made the decision to be ultimately about serving the client, asking, how does it serve the client? So you realize you're with a rookie, or you realize you're with someone who's honestly just trying to prop up their life by feeling powerful, whatever this is. How do you deal with and bear your responsibility for the decision you've made? So of course, you can't force a horse to the water. They're an autonomous presence. So how do you play it with other counsel if they show up difficult?
Really good question. And I think part of it's my personality. So I try to be disarming. If I go into a deposition and somebody is raising their voice and being really aggressive, I've been known to say, like, have we met before? No, I don't know you. Well, then you can't possibly hate me yet. Give me 15 minutes and then you can decide. And I think some people find that a little disarming, and it takes them down a notch. I think it's very uncomfortable for most people to be yelling at somebody who's not also yelling at you. You hear these arguments and they escalate because everybody's yelling. So if I take sort of a more, objective tone and a kinder tone in an appropriate situation, it generally gets the other side to stop yelling. I'm also, the idea of being, I'll call it a kinder, gentler lawyer, it is not at the expense of advocating for the client, and not at the expense of, of working really hard for the client, of advocating the client's position, of doing great, making great motions and arguing very strongly. And it's not at the expense of the client's interests. Certainly, it's to serve the client's interests. And if the client's interests in a particular case or in a particular matter are best served by being, going toe to toe with the attorney, so that they know that we're not going to back down and my client's not going to be a doormat and this is not going to be a walk in the park, then we do that. And it's not that dynamic doesn't have to persist throughout the interaction. It could be that that's the way in the beginning, and they realize, okay, this is somebody who's serious about representing their client. We're not going to have a walkover in this one. Then maybe it changes the dynamic a little bit. I had a very interesting matter recently. I was working with clients, and I actually spoke to them, incoming clients, prospective clients. It was a Sunday afternoon, I remember. And they told me exactly what had been going on, and they were involved in this lawsuit for a long time. And they felt like they were being pushed around. And I kind of thought about the issue. I said, listen, I need to look at this much more closely, but it screams to me that this case needs to be mediated. And they said, well, what's that about? And I explained to them what mediation is, and it's a voluntary process, and the parties sit down with a neutral mediator and try to work out a resolution. And they said, well, that sounds great. We don't really want to spend tons of money on this, and we'd like to get to a stopping point sooner rather than later. Great. Let me approach the other side about mediation. The other side growled and said, no, I'm not mediating the case. Fine, we tried. And we ended up proceeding with the case, went through all kinds of discovery, an expensive discovery process, court appearances, all the bells and whistles. And at some point, a couple of years down the road, the other part approached me and said, hey, about that idea about mediation, what do you think? See if my clients are still interested. And what kind of kills me about it is we got to the exact same point that we would have gotten to that first Monday when I made the phone call. And it would have saved both of our clients a lot of money. I don't like to ascribe motives to other attorneys, since I don't know what their motives are. But when something feels to me like it's a billing opportunity for another attorney, as opposed to an opportunity to serve the client's best interests, I sort of have a visceral reaction to it, because there's plenty of work for all of us. There's plenty of people to help, and there's plenty of people to work with. The idea of taking advantage of somebody is just, it turns my stomach, and it's not in my nature. So when it's just frustrating to me when I see something that could have been resolved earlier, that, we just didn't have that opportunity, and we're arriving at that opportunity now. Let's make the best of it. And the clients recognize, I think, that my approach was, let's get this done as quickly and efficiently as possible. And they then don't have, any sort of negative reaction to, I've had to pay these bills. They're frustrated with the other side, but they're not frustrated with me, because they know that at every turn I was looking for a way to get to a resolution.
Fascinating how appetite for battle can be influenced by the price we pay for it. Like you said earlier, appetite, right? The price we pay. Shout out to one of my lawyers back in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Tim Fry. Tim Fry always is such a kind soul, kind and firm. You didn't mess with the guy, but I'll tell you something, not an opportunity to draw a paycheck. This guy was always about making me aware and making the other side aware, and setting the tone, not just for me, but for the greater whole. And so I love what you say, earlier, so they may be shouting at you, and there you are, and you come in and say, well, I'm going to disarm you. Not like I'm intending to do anything other than what I think is most helpful here, which is to decenter the situation, meaning we're going to focus shift. Right. And so for me to let you know that though you're coming across like this, that has me disinterested. but just has me interested perhaps in just being who I am, meaning I'm going to set the tone here. And it tends to be that when we disrupt that type of flow, we do have an ability to kind of jolt, even like back to the rookie. If it's the rookie or somebody who's like really into this anger issue, to make them go, well, it's not really going. It's, oh, okay, fine, I tried, and then let's maybe go into something different, right? So I love that approach. Speaking about the kindler, gentler, and then you say not at the expense of client interest. I find that so fascinating. I have these two paintings on the wall. One is of a lion and one is of a lamb. And when I don't know if I explained this or I talked to you about this earlier, but yeah. And so in a former life, not in a former real life, but when I was from the age of whatever, not zero, because I was probably, you know how it is, we're born with both firmness and kindness at the same time. But somewhere in between my 20s and my mid 30s, during that span, I decided the thing to be for me, in order for me to get enough of what I wanted, was to be firm. My wife, though, so I married Meg at 24, she was very soft. And people often would say that her and I were very good together. And actually, they'd say things like, it made me kind of cringe, but we were influential together. And I think it made me cringe because I remember thinking, I like that, but what is it about? And I love her there, but what is it about that when she's by herself or I'm by myself, it's the influence, we don't really influence ourselves even that well.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was very firm. And I decided that's how I got my way. And she was really soft. And together we're great. And in life, we did great, only until all of a sudden I realized inside of myself, it wasn't working. And I went into this journey and I kind of checked out of life for about 2.5 years. And I'll never forget when I exited that journey, there was a moment that I blamed the firmness. And I said, the lion's the problem. I should be soft because Meg is soft and her life looks like it works better, though, but at least she's not creating shattered glass everywhere. So I decided I'm going to try on her style. So I became really soft. And, you know, I lost any of that juice. I felt like there weren't as many conflicts, but I lost that good tension in my life. And I'm like, what is this? And I remember having to look back and be like, you know what, actually, I wonder if, and it was really difficult for me, I wonder how it is that perhaps me blaming the firmness is a problem. Like it is a quality problem for me to now work through. And that is, I need to bring that back in. And so what I've done in my life and Meg's done in her life, I brought in the firmness and softness at the same time, not either or. And I just call it a fierce love. So the lion and the lamb playfully wrestling, and she brought in the firmness. And it's kind of an interesting because at the day, the same gentleman who said, back to the point, you two are good together. I mean, good separate too, but you're more influential toward yourself and in environment. This individual said, actually, you know what? You, and they made the comment, like, I enjoy you from the place of you have the ability to influence yourself deeply, even though Meg isn't here. And that's to wrestle with that. And so to disarm the environment, be like, oh, you think you're setting the tone for X? Actually, I come along and I hold both the space of, so kindler, kindler and gentler, not at the expense of the client's interest. Talk to me a bit about how do you do all of this with also tempering being a mom and a wife? Perhaps this makes you a great mom and a wife. I don't know, but how do you do work-life integration? Because I find it interesting. Teddy bear with fangs.
Yeah. I'd say it's really a case of that great maxim, do not mistake my kindness for weakness.
Oh, yep.
And I think that in my personal life, whether it's with friends or with, with my husband or with my daughter, with my sibling, with my parents, I think it's a question for me of, I'm gentle with them. I'm not looking to fight with them. If there's a conflict, I'm looking to resolve it as quickly as possible. What is it that I did wrong that upset you? Or what is it that you did wrong that upset me? Or why are we angry with each other? Or why are you angry? Whatever it is. So I think the fierceness comes in with my loyalty to my family. I mean, you can hurt me. Don't you dare try to go anywhere near my daughter. Like this, that's when the fangs come out. But I don't like to live in my personal life with that kind of tension and hostility. I mean, it's there. I have, an issue with, with a service provider of some type. I will certainly stand up for myself every time, but I will do it in a way that I think is genuine for me. And one of the things, back to Dick Baccalaureate, one of the things I learned from him was you got to be in your own style.
Mm-hmm.
So, find a style that's comfortable for you. And he was a master in the courtroom, but he had a way about him that was sort of that the Columbo character. He could be a little bit rumpled. He could be intentionally a little bit seemingly disorganized. It was brilliant. But he'd stand in front of a jury and he'd say, all right, so we're here about an incident that happened on, was it the 17th or the 18th? You'll find out about that later. And what he was doing was he was basically signaling to the jury, hey, there's going to be an issue here about the 17th and the 18th. Pay attention to that. And he was masterful at it.
Wow.
But if I tried to do that and I said, literally, 17th or the 18th, they'd be like, this idiot doesn't know her case. What's she doing? That's not a genuine approach for me. It's not true to who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I try to show up in my personal life the same way that I do in my professional life, which is, if you're gentle and easygoing with me, you're going to get the same in return.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have something that we need to work out, fine. But if you really cross me, we're done. So I think that
that's brilliant and beautiful. Good job.
And I think being a mom has definitely softened me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also made me a better lawyer and a better service to my clients, because I always knew that, small businesses, family businesses, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, mid-sized businesses, I always recognized before I was a mom that these businesses were serving families, that there were people relying on this business to be successful, whether it's the ownership or the staff or the employees. There's a real need there for this business to be successful. And what role can I play in helping them, whether it's resolving a dispute, doing growth strategy, mentoring somebody, being a business advisor, whatever it is, what role can I play when they reach out to me? And I think that just having my own family and having my own law firm and having people here whose families rely on our success, I think it makes it just even kind of sharpens it a little bit for me and brings it into more focus, that it's so important to serve the people in the business well, so that they can serve their clients well, their customers well, serve their employees well, and, get them past whatever rough spot they're having as quickly as possible, or get them to grow as they want to, or protect them as they need to be protected.
Wow. Well, spectacular. Seems like you found a profession that serves your personal life, and your personal life serves your profession. That's incredible. Like that's really, like, I got a tender place in my heart for that place. Like, wow, that is amazing. A work-life integration versus saying, well, when I leave work, I leave my work hat there. And it's actually, what lessons did I learn from work that I can bring into right to the children, to being a mom, being a wife. And then when you leave home, go to work, it's like, well, they taught me this lesson. So it seems like you're constantly learning. And I love the approach of, and you really own the teddy bear side. So I know when I say, in jest, teddy bear with fangs, oftentimes people think, oh, she's got the fangs, focus on that, right? Yeah. But it's like, just observe your smile. Just look at so something that resonates really deep with me is choosing to have empathy for whatever you're presented with. Originally, like choosing always to be empathetic. Like, you're coming to me because this is how you feel. Fair enough. Right. And so, the fierceness coming out when you question my loyalty, or if you stress test that, I will show you I'm fiercely loyal. And so there are these places of needed, I'll show up in this way. And then, like you say, I'm gentle. It's like, who doesn't? And to be honest, if we come on board and we're like, well, I got this idea and I think this person needs to be raked across the coals and rot in hell. We're like, yeah, I know you feel that way, empathetic, but it's like, let me be gentle to that approach. Let me be empathetic and let me just lean in and so I can only imagine when you parent, your children, or you're being the adult for your children, and whatever that ends up being, right? I think that's super cool. And this is a personal question, but you don't have to answer if you don't want. But do you ever share the things that to your children? Do you share to your children what they're helping you learn that helps you in your profession, and vice versa? Do you openly reveal back and forth?
My daughter's 3, so there's not a lot.
Oh, okay.
I would say not yet, but I intend to.
Nice.
And I think that, like I said, I said earlier, sometimes you get a client, it's like, okay, I know you're angry. I know you're really, really angry. And sometimes when I talk to my daughter, even at 3, it's like, I know you're sad. I know you're sad because you said, I can't, you can't have a cookie. I get it. You're sad. And I think that, I mean, at 3, I don't think she appreciates it or cares that I'm empathetic, but I hope that as she gets older, that she understands, like, okay, mom has recognized this emotion that I have. She knows, I've made my opinion known about this, but I'm still not going to get what I want. So obviously with clients, it's not that they don't get what they want, but I think that sometimes, I mean, a part of my job is like part bartender sometimes, or part counselor, or part therapist. People want to be heard. I just got off the phone with a prospective client who has been through a couple of attorneys, and she feels really taken advantage of. And she feels like, the legal profession is turned against her, like she's not getting what she needs in court, and like the other parties are just running roughshod over her. And she needs me, I think, in that time. Like, that's terrible. I'm really sorry that happened to you. Like, and I genuinely am. Like, no, I don't need sorry. I'm like, I get it, but I do want to tell you, like, I'm really sorry. You shouldn't be in this position. If you want to work with me and change attorneys, I'm happy to consider that. But let's talk about what strategy gets you to where you need to be. You're done fighting this. You're not interested in fighting this anymore. You want to get to a resolution point. Let me come up with, our top 3 steps or top 3 approaches we can take. And then let's talk about your budget and your thirst for battle, like I said, and your appetite for this and your timeline. If you say, I want to get out of this and I want to get out of this now, and I'm willing to take a softer position, let's explore that. If you say, let's go as hard as we can for the next 6 months, see where that gets us, and then reevaluate, I'm in. But I think it's a lot of people really wanting to be heard, and people wanting somebody who understands what they're going through, cares about what they're going through, appreciates it, and genuinely wants to help.
How do you know somebody doesn't understand your empathy? So I think unless people know that we care, they're just focused on their outcome, and they're not doing anything other in their brain and their heart. It's just, I came in pissed. I said I want him to go to hell. I still do. Right? Fair enough.
And to me, then the kinder, gentler, softer side kind of melts away. Like you said, you bring what you need to bring to the table. Yeah. So I'm still going to be who I am.
That's nice.
I'm going to fight like hell for that client who wants me to fight.
That's nice. Yeah, no, that's nice. No, it's you have to release the autonomy of the human is going to be that. You're not going to take that away. You try that, that person will fight you. It's never going to work. And so,
I don't want someone to feel uncomfortable. I don't want someone to listen. I know there are people who say, I want you to be aggressive up to the point of being unethical. That might not be the right client for me. And if somebody is really looking to kind of test those bounds of what's appropriate conduct and what I'm not going to get sanctioned for, that's probably not the right client for me. I mean, like I said, I'm willing to be aggressive. I got that, that sword and shield out, and we will march down to the courthouse together, and I will fight as hard as you want to fight. And, like I said, I love a battle. I'm a trial attorney, but I really do think it serves the clients better when we go in with a different approach.
When you observe your clients with your approach and we can clearly see that you have values and you bring your values to every aspect of your life. You don't have to live 2 separate lives at work, at home, in the airport. It doesn't matter. If you're on stage, off stage, you live your values, and that's beautiful. When you observe what has happened for your clients because of the style that you take, what is the advantage to working with someone like yourself as a business lawyer and attorney whose focus is on that early and efficient resolution wherever possible?
A good story from last month. So very, very difficult mediation involving former spouses who were just at each other's throats. So there's a lot of mistrust, a lot of accusations flying back and forth. The papers themselves, written back by the attorneys were pretty aggressive. And the court offered us an opportunity to mediate the case. And we all agreed to mediate the case. We started the day, it was 10 o'clock or so. And whatever time we started, doesn't matter. And it started off like, this might not go well. We're not getting, the mediators coming back and forth from our room to their room to the third party's room, just to kind of get a feel of what everybody's position is. And is there someplace we could get to? And my client, we knew the position she wanted to take. I knew the strategy she wanted to take, but she was there, and we were going to be flexible based on the conditions on the ground. And we were there for 14 hours. We took a brief lunch break, no break for dinner. I walked out of, I'm trying to remember what, maybe it was a little longer. I walked out of there at almost 1 o'clock in the morning. And we had a resolution. We had a signed agreement between the parties. And my client told me, I mean, she really couldn't have been happier, because it, you know, she appreciated that, you know, even at 11:45 or, you know, 12:15 in the morning, that I was, you know, still being thoughtful about what we were advocating for. And when we were, you know, working with the other side on language that we were going to agree to, I was, you know, really just very zealous in my approach for her. But she just really appreciated the fact that discovery was over. We were not going to have to do depositions. This was not going to drag on for years. It was not going to cost her tens of thousands of dollars more. And, you know, was it the ideal resolution? No. But was it better than she was willing to walk away for? Yeah. And I think that to me, that's a great result, because the client's happy. And if at any point she'd said, you know what, these terms just don't feel right to me, I don't want to do this, and we leave. But I'm willing to stay. I'm literally was willing to stay there into the early wee hours of the next morning, to make sure that if we had an opportunity to resolve something and get it, you know, on paper signed, so that nobody could, you know, was going to renege on it or reconsider anything like that, that's what we needed to do. And I think that I won't speak for her, but I hope she felt very supported. I hope she felt very understood. I hope she felt that she was well represented and zealously advocated for. But I also hope that she understands and feels that she was respected, because it was always her call. The strategy was always in her hands. I was there to make recommendations and give advice. But I think that the way that she was treated throughout the litigation by myself and my firm really made for a better experience, because, you know, she was not somebody who was coming in bloodthirsty and said, you know what, I don't care. You know, some clients are willing to have a hollow victory. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care if I'm in the red at the end. I want to make a point, and I want to make this guy suffer. Okay, fine. You know, recognize that that's what's going to happen. I don't love a Pyrrhic victory, but if that's what a client wants, we'll go for it. So I think that, you know, my approach gets clients to a point where they feel very heard in the process. They feel like they're very much a part of the process. They're talking to the mediator. They're talking to me. They're having, you know, conversations. They're bouncing ideas off the mediator, because I'm happy to have them talk to the mediator. You know, hey, what do you think if I do this? Well, what do you think a judge would do if we do that? And the mediator, who's a third party neutral, is going to give an opinion. And if it's certainly not gospel, but it's something for the client to consider. And I like when clients get to a resolution of their case, whether it's by mediation, whether it's, like I told you before, by discontinuance, whether it's an arbitration, whether it's a trial or an appeal. I want them to feel like they had a voice in the mediation, like they could talk to me openly. Not mediation, a voice in the, you know, in the outcome of the case. They can talk to me freely. They can tell me when they're getting a little gun shy. You know, I know I said I wanted to go, you know, to the mattresses on this one, but I'm not feeling it anymore. And I want them to be able to call me when they're getting nervous. I mean, I have clients who call all the time, like, hey, I know we're waiting for that decision on the motion, but do you think we should do this? And what if we do that? It's like, listen, let's talk about our options. You know, let's talk about it, because I want you to be comfortable with what we're doing. I'm not the lawyer who's going to, you know, going to take the action I want and ask for forgiveness later. That's not ethical or appropriate. So I think that what it does in terms of the approach, in terms of the outcomes, is it gets hopefully better outcomes earlier. It gets the best outcome we can, because I'm always going to be firm. And I'm not going to, it's not weakness to be, you know, to be kind and considerate. And I just hope that the clients understand that I'm always going to give them advice that's in their best interest, and the best interest of their business, and the best interest of their reputation if they're concerned about that, or their relationships if they're concerned about that. It goes back to knowing what they want. You know, what's important, what are they willing to give up, and what's their budget, and what's their timeline. That's all considerations we have to think about.
Oh my, you bring up so much. It's so good. You're making my brain spin, which I love, because I like just navigating, and I love finding myself in unknown territory and all this.
I like that.
Right. Yeah. And I've been in certain court situations, and I like to stay away from them as best I can. The last time I talked to my lawyer, he said, perhaps this is the last time we meet. Because he goes, listen, I'm one of these people that you need, but perhaps we don't want to meet again. Like, fair enough.
and that's really, and honestly, that's just not my approach. For the most part, I have long-term relationships.
Right.
So I might be helping a client form the company.
Yeah.
Then I'm helping them with, with other professionals and being a resource to them, or, do
Yeah.
you need an accountant? Let's talk about this. Oh, I want to get into marketing. I have somebody you can talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm working with them as needed through the growth process, whether it's drafting contracts or, hey, we're thinking about this strategy or that strategy. What have you seen work? What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
So I like those relationships very much. And I like to be at the table for those conversations, because, some of what becomes battle or dispute or conflict could have been avoided earlier on. If you'd thought, did the partners come up with an operating agreement that really thought through a lot of the issues? Do they have a partnership agreement that really kind of sets forth how things are going to go, and what happens if one of them becomes disabled, or one of them wants to retire, or God forbid somebody dies? Those are all things that can be worked on the front end. So I like to be the lawyer that they want to call in the beginning and say, listen, we're forming this new company, and this is what we want it to look like. What are we not thinking about? What are our blind spots? And then, a couple months later, hey, we're talking about entering into these agreements. Can you read them for us and explain them to us? And we may need to draft a few more agreements. Or, hey, we're having this conflict. Hopefully it's not going to grow into anything, but at least we wanted to let you know what was going on in case we need to tap into your experience and need you for something. So, I don't want to be the, I have to call Dara, and I hate when I have to call Dara. There must be something going on. I like to be, in a relationship with somebody who can say like, well, Dara's our lawyer, so let's just call her and see what she thinks about this.
Well, and just as a disclaimer, the lawyer that I mentioned earlier, Tim, he just outsourced to another one because it's outside of his territory. And and this individual, this is his way of tongue in cheek connecting with me in a pokey, like laugh kind of attitude. But I hear where you're coming from.
And obviously, and I said it too, like, listen, I hope you never need me again.
Yeah.
But, but like I said, there are many clients that I have that longer term relationship with where I've seen them from formation through retirement.
It's interesting. So taking it back to empathy, that teddy bear, to be kind, to be warm with them. It's interesting. A friend years ago said to me, and he introduced me to the concept. He was a really interesting, and he still is a very interesting individual. But he says to me, so you can either ask for permission, James, or forgiveness. You get to decide. And I'm like, that's fascinating. And so you know how it is. Typically, it's like this duality in life. We like to think, well, choose this or that. I know there's more options in this, but I love what you're saying. It's like when it comes to, when it comes to, even if we focus on, permission to exist, permission to call Dara, sorry. And I dare you to call Dara, basically, right? The permission to do so is because she showed up with saying, I get you. I hear you. I'm going to say it twice. I get you. And then if you just don't want to pursue this, fair enough. Let's go. Listen, the one thing that I really want to, if you don't mind, just spin for a little bit. If you don't mind, for the audience here, help us understand, what are your personal values? Because here's what I reckon. When you're doing mediation, 14 hours, like, it's one thing to be the one that feels like was slighted. So you're showing up, you're going, this company X did this. So you're there. You don't care if you don't sleep because you haven't slept for years anyway.
Like I said, I have a 3-year-old.
Right. But then you get this lawyer and you realize this lawyer hasn't had your experience, but she's supposed to stay awake and be sharp or sharper than you and actually manage your state. Right. So you have these personal values and your life is built on them. And no matter how long, the hour of night, you show up with this stuff and it's just of you. It's coming from you and through you. So help our audience here. What would you say your personal values are? And I was just taking some notes. And one of the things that I can see already is you've chosen to be helpful, and, in all ways. So bring service, helpful in that way. But if you could, are there certain principles or certain values that you stick with that are very clear to you? Here's who I am. Here's my value. And here's how I show up.
I would say probably the top two, I think, are helpful. I love, and I think loyalty is another one. I mean, I've been, 20 years ago, 20 years ago, my business partner and I started working together. He was my boss at the time. We worked together for 10 years and then we started this firm together. And, we haven't had a disagreement yet. It's literally, we joke that we, argue with our spouses, but not with each other. And the relationship is just the best business relationship I could ever have asked for. But we are fiercely loyal to each other. You know, I've told people that, you know, if Scott found a dime on the floor, he would change it into 2 nickels and give me one, because, you know, we're partners and that's what we do. We don't count, you know, we don't bean count about how much work did you do this week and how much work did I do. We know that we're both working for the firm. So I think that, you know, being loyal it serves me so well in my personal life, in my professional life. I mean, I have, you know, great relationships with my family. I have wonderful friends who are, you know, like family to me. And I have business relationships that I can, you know, I can tap into when I need to, whether it's for advice, like, hey, you know, I never really run across this before, but I know you have, what do you think? And people will take my call. If it's an adversary who I have a relationship with, like, you know, hey, listen, I know we were going to do this on Tuesday. Can we move it to Thursday? Sure, Dara, whatever you need. You know, those kinds of things. So I think that the loyalty and the helpfulness, and I think that, you know, it comes up in even like networking and connecting with other professionals. You want to be of help to somebody, and you want to offer before you ask. So I think that those kinds of values have served me well professionally and personally. Because you know, I want to be helpful. I want to be adaptable, and I want to be loyal. I would say that's probably my top 3.
Wow, that's so good. So I was just I was thinking as you were talking here, and I was just marking down some notes, and I wrote down, perhaps you're a helpful saber-toothed tiger and a loyal teddy bear.
Exactly. Except I think they're extinct.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's a deep problem. Well, yeah. So, well, there's so much I can navigate. Perhaps I'll have to do part 2 at some point in time, because I'm looking at you and going, you know what? There's something that you said a little while ago. And yeah, why don't we just take a bit of time now to discuss? You said these 2 words. I know the audience, most of which are probably not all professional lawyers or litigators. You said these 2 words back to back. There's someone who I have a relationship with. So relationship, adverse, and then relationship. So most people, this is dichotomy. Yeah, adversary. It's like, I'm doing against. So people are feeling, oh, adversary. I don't really want this, but I have a relationship. Talk to me how you do that, because I think the world needs to understand there's a little trick here, and that is maybe not good or bad. Words are just words. Words get us in trouble if we're not careful. So adversary, you know, audience, pick up what you're feeling with that word to begin with. Adversary, like, it's my enemy. I don't want them here. And you're saying, no, draw them on your side of the table. Go ahead.
I think it's a question, and I think that, you know, lawyers refer to it as an adversarial relationship. So it's, you know, but I like the way you're thinking about it, which is it's a relationship, but what can we do with it? And I think it probably comes down to, for me, keeping the personal out of the professional. So I have had plenty of adversaries who I've gone to war with in the courtroom. I mean, you know, really strong arguments in front of a judge, or a really tough day in front of a jury. And at the end of the trial, or, you know, maybe even after that motion argument, we can go grab a cup of coffee or have lunch together. Or, you know, they send me a baby gift when I have my daughter. Or, you know, I'll shoot them a note saying, like, you know, hey, I saw the Yankees won last night. Like, you know, I'm sure you're celebrating.
They probably bugged it. Society is thinking they probably bugged it, because, you know, what we're thinking, we're going, they're always they're always the enemy. And you're going, no, they bought me like some diapers. If anything, I chucked the diapers away.
Of course, I probably, maybe I should check that teddy bear. But I think it really is about developing that rapport with people, where they respect you enough to understand that you're just doing your job. You know, yeah, you took a tough position today and you may have beaten them up. And, you know, that's part of the job. But they don't take it personally. And listen, there are plenty of lawyers I deal with who are, you know, take it very personally. And you can't untie them from that need to be right and to be angry. And you just deal with those people as you deal with them. It's fine. You know, I'll meet you where you are, no problem. But I think when you can develop that rapport with somebody where I don't want to be a lawyer who people are like, well, I don't believe the things she says. Well, that's terrible, because I can't, and I have no credibility. And that's not good for my clients. My client, you know, a client who calls me doesn't want to later determine that I have no credibility with anyone because nobody believes anything I say. So I think it really is, you know, an adversarial relationship can still be a positive relationship. You can be adverse to somebody. Somebody can be your, you know, in a legal sense, can be your opponent. but they don't have to be your enemy.
That's so nice.
And it doesn't have to be hostile, and it doesn't have to be nasty. And I've said to plenty of attorneys, listen, our clients hate each other. We don't need to. I'm gonna,
Well, there you go again with not there you go with your helpfulness. I love that. Your stance like, hey, listen, I'm going to bring the tone, whether you're screaming, listen, our clients want to do this. What does it help us doing this? Let's remind ourselves, we're the professionals. These people are looking for a bit of assistance on how to deal with that inner stirring, the emotions. Are we going to be helped? Go ahead. Sorry.
And I think it's also more to your point. I think when you say to somebody like, listen, our clients hate each other, but we don't have to, or I know that that's coming from your client and that's probably not the position you want to take. People are generally not going to say like, no, it's my position. They're like, I'm giving him an out. I'm giving him if you want to take this really harsh position, I'm sure you're doing it because your client told you to. Let's see if we can work through something. Let our clients scream at each other if they want to. But let's recognize that if we're going to have a mediation, maybe we don't all need to be in the same room. Let's keep our clients at opposite ends of the hallway because it's not going to be productive if they're together. There's no need for, a mediation for your client to hear my presentation. I'm not going to convince her of anything. And there's no reason for my client to see your presentation because I'm not going to convince him of anything. Let's all work through the mediator and work toward a common goal. Like we said back at the beginning, let's metaphorically sit on the same side of the table and look at the problem together.
Well, you're just bringing up in me that people like you, I know, like I mentioned Tim Fry, now I get to know you. People like you are worth every penny. You're setting the tone.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
You are like, you're worth every penny because if you're picking this up, like here she shows up, she's doing this thing called work and her passion, and her kids are home, or, the 3-year-old's doing whatever and running around with a teddy bear that might have a chip in it. Just kidding.
I hope not.
No, just being silly. But here she is, she's working and she is basically guiding. You're bringing stuff to her that you don't know how to, you're needing some help on. And she, a good lawyer like her, and I think lawyers most anyway, intend to be good. It's just, you have to go to a certain level of development where you go like, actually, I have decided that I will live by my value. It's like what you say, being, helpful. And like I said earlier, helpful as saber-tooth tiger perhaps doesn't exist anymore. And maybe like that loyal teddy bear. You show up with those two things. You mentioned the third, I forgot. But you show up and there is something that people like you bring, which sometimes we as society, people that retain you folks to help us with a mess, I think we underestimate. You guys handle so much, not only of your life, but then our life. And then when the other lawyer comes at you like this, you're constantly in a helpful state going, hey, listen, that's not probably, when you're angry, Mr. Lawyer, it's probably not even of you. It's because your client. I understand that. And it's like, whoa, it's like there's such a dissolving presence that you bring. And it's like this infrastructure, this undertow that sets the stage for if we have to do battle, at least we are the professionals and we're trying to help these people get to a place of reason so that we can all resolve this, because we don't want to have this last forever. Like Johnny Depp, I don't know if this will ever end,
Maybe not.
Right. Talk to us. Final question. And my audience loves this question. And perhaps it's just because it just drops down right real. You are this professional and you hold this. And by the way, it's in a really beautiful container. I'll be totally honest. Worth every penny. Absolute. Right. And as a matter of fact, what I'll do after this, I'm just going to send Tim a little note and say, Tim, I got to know you through another lady today. This is really what you're doing. So thank you. So shout out for those people, for those of you who are listening, who've had a lawyer who has been about this work, shout out and say thanks. And perhaps, and I'll invite you shortly, Dara, to have people have an opportunity to find you, right? And where to. But before we do that, talk to me, where do you struggle in relation to, how would I language this? In relation to the temperature of what happens when a client comes in the whole process, whether they do mitigation or they go through with the court proceedings, where do you struggle in the sense of you question, am I helping in the best way possible? Like, what is that for you?
think I think the struggle sometimes comes if the client. I mean, I've joked about it. People call me for this, they call me for that, they call me when they're not even sure what they need. But sometimes a client is involved in a dispute or involved in a conflict or is anticipating one, and they don't really. They know they're angry and they know that something's going wrong or it's about to go wrong or has gone wrong, but don't really know what they want to do about it. And it's a little. I struggle sometimes to to get that client to a point where they can express to me and communicate to me what it is they want. Because I mean, you don't want to aimlessly wander through litigation or through conflict without a goal in mind. Do we want, do you want money? Do you want the satisfaction of, seeing this guy squirm? Do you have a partnership and you just really want to see the accounting because you're concerned about what's happening with certain monies, but you want to go forward and still continue this productive partnership? So I think that, it's always a struggle for me when the client doesn't yet know how to be clear about what their goals are. And I consider it my job to ask the right questions. And after 20 plus years, I think I do that. But sometimes the questions don't have answers right at that time when they first come in. So I think that's a time where it's a bit of a struggle to get to the next step, because you have to, I don't, and there are probably lawyers who would say, well, let's just start doing this. Like, well, I don't know what to recommend to start doing if I don't know where you want to get to. And I don't want to take a step that's going to poke the bear, so to speak, or that's going to jeopardize a relationship that's important to you. So let's just, why don't you, you don't have to answer me right now. Give this some thought and come back to me and tell me kind of where you see that wanting to resolve this. Because I can throw out the options. I can throw out your goal may be this, your goal may be that. It may be a combination of these 4 different things. And until the client can really, internalize and kind of crystallize what the goal is, it's a bit of a struggle to try to help.
So listeners, I don't know what's coming to heart for you, but I just tapped into somebody here that I would say has a pretty developed ability to serve well and help people see clearly. And here she is. And how often isn't this the case? So Dara, it's actually comical. This is, I think, how life often works. I think you're so proficient, you're so good, and yet you're still doubting. And sometimes, and they say in life, you never want to believe that you're like amazing at it, because if you believe you are the role, then you're easily spooked and easily knocked off. If you think, for example, if someone says, James, you're a nice person, you're a kind person, I go, well, I try to be. And they go, hey, what do you mean try? I'm like, well, I'm doing my best, but I got a long way to, because we're still working there. We're still working, because to your point, it's like, and you made earlier, hey, if somebody comes along and they go beyond ethics, whatever you were saying, hey, perhaps you're not the right client. So what you're saying constantly is, how can I be with the decision that I've made, that I'm here to serve my clients? So if you wanted me to go toe to toe, I will, that's for sure. But how do I reconcile that with, for me, that my value is that I am a helpful person, and I'm a teddy bear, and I'm also loyal in the fact that a saber tooth, if it needs to come out. And so to bring that, and so when I say comical, I don't mean to be, haha, we're laughing at your strain. What I'm saying, it's funny how sometimes struggles in life we say we want to get rid of, but it's the thing that makes you great. It makes you great because you're so passionate towards this. Because all I hear you saying, like, seriously, the whole talk, I would never have guessed you would have said that's your struggle. I'm going, you're doing that so proficiently. But there is hope in the world that you'll be even better. How? I don't know, but you'll be even better. I don't know how you can get better than sitting at the same side of the table as your adversary. But hey, I know you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. So I'm just, yeah. So you'll figure it out. You like a good challenge. So no, I'm sure you'll figure this out.
Always up for a challenge.
I love it. So Dara, where can people find you? It's just an honor to have you on the show. Where can people find you?
Thank you so much, James. This has been so much fun. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So Dara Rosenbaum on LinkedIn, and the firm is Rosenbaum and Taylor. So the website is just www.rosenbaumtaylor.com. Those are probably the 2 places that you can find me. But I love to connect with people, and I always joke that I kind of play that little memory game that you play when you're a kid. Like, the cards are flipped upside down. Like, well, when's the last place you saw a strawberry? I like to make those connections to people. It's like, my one client's working in media, and I actually happen to know a guy who does something that maybe they should have a conversation. So to me, I love having those connections. So I invite people to reach out to me and connect with me, because you kind of never know where that relationship can go.
Always more for you, eh? Always more. That's so neat. That's so neat. You live your value relationship super well. I'm gonna say super impressed. I don't know what that means, but I don't know. But it's just honestly, you are a gem. So I'll
Thank you.
just I want to leave it at that. So friends, go to, and could you spell your last name? So Dara Rosenbaum, so you could spell so they can, and I'm gonna put in the show note. I'm putting the show notes anyway, but just go ahead.
Sure. My first name is Dara, Dara. Last name is Rosenbaum, ROS like Sam, EN like Nancy, B as in boy, AUM like Mary.
Wonderful. People, audience, whoever you are, sitting in the car, driving, whatever, wherever you are, you had a treat today, and it's because of Mrs. Dara Rosenbaum. So Dara, thanks for being on the show. And
fantastic, James. Thank you so much.
Awesome. You take care.
Thank you. You too.
I sincerely hope you enjoyed that little interplay. If you liked the podcast episode, let us know by subscribing, leaving a little review, and sharing with a friend as you feel appropriate. Honestly, the guests that I host on this show, they love the feedback, and I personally love knowing that you're listening. So whether you choose to work with me as a guide or not, and that's your guide or not, that's simply great. Why, you ask? Well, because you're obviously one of those that's listened to the very end of this podcast. You've clearly made a decision to invest in yourself. And honestly, how isn't that just the best news? So if you decide you need and or want to get unstuck by activating your creativity and your resources, if you want to see things clearly, if you want to get to your next level, if you want to live with vibrant energy and passion, simply go to www.jameshepner.com for one-on-one coaching, and or go to www.weeklywinsandlosses.com for the no-charge Friday noon Global Community Weekly Wins and Losses video call. So again, I thank you for investing in yourself. See you next time. My sincere hope is that you've gleaned a few nuggets for yourself and a few pieces of interest that help you move forward in your unique journey. So again, I thank you for joining me here. This is James Hepner clocking out. Until next time, peace out, rock up.